Welcome to the Unlocking the Club podcast, where we host honest and direct conversations about journeys of access, personal truth, and reclaiming space. We share our truth so that you can find the key to own your truth, honor your journey, and reclaim your space. Grab your keys, your wallet, your phone, and invite your friends to meet you at the club. Here's your host, Angela Taylor.
Welcome to a very, very special series of Unlocking the Club, where we explore one of the most important yet often overlooked conversations that we can have, a conversation about estate planning and elder care. I'm your host, Angela Taylor, and over the past few years, my family, my friends, we've learned the hard way about the critical importance of having a will or a trust in place. When unexpected moments arise, not having a plan can leave families vulnerable. And I've seen firsthand how it can create chaos during already challenging times. Recently, I conducted a poll and the results were startling. 80% of the people that I polled between the ages of 20 and 65 don't have a will or a trust in place. Even more striking is that most of those who do take action, it's only after experiencing a tragic event in their family. National data suggests and supports this as well, with studies showing that a significant majority of adults, particularly between and within the Black and BIPOC communities, have not taken steps to secure their legacies. And when we fail to plan, we leave our families with legal battles, financial burdens, and emotional stress that can take years to untangle. That's why here at Unlocking the Club, we're dedicating an entire 12-part series to unlocking the essentials of estate planning, with bonus episodes focused on adjacent topics. Together with two brilliant minds, Jasmine Young from Young Law Group and Verlena Green-Tuluska from VDG Law Group, we'll break down what you need to know about protecting your assets, building a legacy, and making sure your loved ones are cared for when it matters the most. Our goal in this series is to equip you with the knowledge and the tools to take action now before life forces you to. Whether you're just starting out or navigating the complexities of caring for aging loved ones, these conversations will give you the clarity and the confidence to plan for your future. So grab your notebooks, tune in, and let's unlock this critical conversation together. Welcome to Unlocking the Club's special series on estate planning and elder care. Hello again, I'm Angela Taylor, your host for Unlocking the Club, and welcome back to our special 12-part series on estate planning and elder care. Today, we're going to talk about the evolving landscape of estate planning. You know, the field of estate planning is always evolving thanks to changes in tax laws, societal shifts, and advances in technology. And as we all are experiencing, in changes in our political administrations. They all have an impact on estate planning. So today we're going to explore how these changes are shaping the future of estate planning and what you need to know to stay ahead of the curve. Joining us for this special conversation about the evolving landscape of estate planning is Jasmine Young of the Young Law Group. Shane, thanks again for joining us.
Hi, Angela.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm glad to be back.
Great to have you here. And I'm curious for you who have been doing this for 20 years, a couple of decades, like how much has estate planning evolved over the years?
You know, it's interesting because we've definitely seen a shift as far as who is kind of at the forefront of estate planning or kind of leading the charge. But interestingly, we still see so many of the same mistakes, you know, the pitfalls that we were talking about in an earlier episode. We still see so many of those same mistakes being made over and over again. But I am excited and hopeful. I'm optimistic because now where we are providing more resources, we're out there educating, we have these platforms like your podcast. Thank you again, you know, for utilizing this platform to provide this information on a more widespread scale. It's just so important that we have the conversations and we put the information out there, because I think, 20 years ago, it wasn't like this. We weren't talking about it the way that we talk about estate planning now. And I've seen this shift. I've seen it being, a certain type of demographic that was, these were the only people that were putting estate plans in place. To now we see so much more diversity. It's such a wider range of people that are coming in and making planning a priority. So traditionally it was, typically, people that were very wealthy, people that were older, that had established, well established, into their lives, professions, and so forth. Now we're seeing, very young clients that are coming in, whether or not they have assets, whether or not they have children, they're wanting to put planning in place, for themselves and, for their loved ones, for their family members. And we're seeing, many women leading the charge. And that's actually one of the reasons why I started an organization called Women Decision Makers, which we do an event every other month, and we host it. It's an event, typically we have it here in Las Vegas. It's open to women in the community. My firm sponsors it, and we have different topics. So not estate planning specific, although I do mention it, but we've got different topics like women and wealth, or fitness and health, just different things. And the reason why it made sense to do that was because I was seeing women coming into my office. Women were the ones that were sometimes dragging their reluctant partners, into an estate planning meeting. And, because I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in an earlier conversation. We tend to outlive our male counterparts, and we're the ones that are having to pick up the pieces. And years ago, or generations above us and beyond, it was usually the men that were in control of making these decisions, and we were kind of left out of it. And then when our male counterparts would predecease us, we wouldn't have access to the accounts that belonged to us, or the assets, or even the decision making. So I think that as times have changed, and as we have evolved as a society, and women are much more involved and more so driven to take action, we're doing it at much more at a much more rapid pace than what we were seeing before.
Yeah, representation does matter. And so kudos to you for taking on this charge of being in this field, because I think that the fact that there are more female attorneys, there are more attorneys of color that
Mhm.
are making projects and prospects like this more accessible to folks
Right.
in the community matters quite a bit. Is when you can walk into a law firm and sit across the table from someone who may have a shared experience as you, it
Mhm.
puts you at ease in a way that maybe before it didn't. And so I think the evolution of the legal profession is certainly helping with that as well.
Yeah, it's so true, because when I became an attorney 20 something years ago now, there were very few female attorneys for, a lot of different reasons. It's hard to be a woman and a wife and a mother and, kind of keep all of those balls in the air. You're constantly juggling. Now, thankfully, things have changed to where we're seeing so my oldest daughters are twins, and they're in their second year of law school now. And I think the ratio is 51% woman to male,
Oh,
49
wow.
male. So, that is very impressive. Of course, when I went to law school, it was much more of a dramatic shift, much less women that were represented, and especially women of color, like it was unheard of. There were very few. So I'm really excited that we have this opportunity now to be able to share this information, take action, and really, be at, kind of be the trailblazers and continue to lead for our families, to protect our legacies and protect the things that are important to us.
Yeah, and I think one of the themes that we've shared throughout this series has been how important it is for you to have a relationship with your attorney who you're working on your estate plan with. And I think that, not to be too stereotypical, but women are more caretakers. And so when you were looking for an attorney, an estate planning attorney, looking for someone who is not just transactional, but someone who can get the job done, but who also is going to build a relationship with you and get to know you and your family and what's important to you.
Right. It's interesting because even though, I've known this to be true in my own personal experience, I'm always I'm always flattered when a client will come in and say, I picked you because you are a woman, because you are a mother or a wife, or because you are a woman of color. There's that relatability, factor there. Like you said, it's about making people feel comfortable, because we're talking about the things that are most precious to you. We're talking about our families. We're talking about your finances. These things are very personal, and many times confidential. And so to be able to share freely and feel comfortable is so important. And I think that that's why a lot of people don't want to take that step, is because they haven't found that level of trust with someone, or they might have had a bad experience. I think that when we were talking about pitfalls in the prior episode, I think that sometimes we allow a prior experience to keep us from taking, seizing another opportunity or taking action in a way that we should. And, a lot of times I've had clients that come in and they're like, it's taken me a long time because I had this really bad experience with this attorney. And I think that that's a challenge that I, as an attorney, have to overcome many times, is, this persona of what an attorney is and how you're going to be treated and what you're going to feel when you're sitting across from someone, in this type of meeting. And so the more that we can kind of break down those barriers and just have a conversation and say, look, we're all human here, and I understand, some of the questions and the concerns that you have, and I'm here to help you, and I'm here to support you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to just tell you what to do. Although if you ask my opinion, I'll let you know, okay, this is what I would do. I get that question a lot, like, okay, Shane, if you were in my situation, what would you do? And sometimes there are different factors that come into play. And so I'll have to kind of preface my response with that. But, a lot of times I can say, well, look, just based on my own experience, my own relationship with my kids, or, this or that I've had my own experience with, this is what I would do. And I think that that's also another part of being an attorney, is not just, the attorney at law role. It's more the counselor. And if you see in my email, you might have noticed it says attorney at law and attorney and counselor, because there's a dual component there. There's a dual role, especially when it comes to estate planning. You can work with a very competent attorney that knows the laws inside and out, but if you can't talk to them, if they can't make very complex ideas or theories digestible for you, then you're at a loss. And how can you make empowered decisions? How can you make educated decisions if you don't even understand the decisions and what they involve?
Yeah, you reminded me of a math teacher, a calculus professor in college, who you could tell was brilliant, but he spent more time trying to impress us with his brilliance than actually teaching us.
Right.
And I think that sometimes you do encounter, again, in healthcare, these physicians who are great, and then as opposed to kind of bringing the content to you so you can understand it, they want to show you how bright they are, maybe as a way to prove that you should trust them.
Right.
But when you have someone that's able to distill this complex concepts into ways that you can consume them, it's really important, and make it more of a conversation than a presentation. Yeah. Well, we talked about in a previous episode the impact that COVID had. And I know for a lot of my corporate clients, we talked about COVID was fertile ground for disruption. In what ways did COVID and us having to shift 72 hours later from maybe a in-person encounters to being able to work remotely. How did COVID, if at all, impact the evolution of estate planning?
It's really interesting because we actually saw several law firms shut down. They weren't able to make the shift. And so the tagline for my law firm is a modern look at the law. And so we always try to be on the innovative side of things, like looking at how we can be more efficient, more effective. How can we serve our clients better? How can we make it less of less tension, make it as streamlined as possible? And we were already serving clients virtually before the pandemic, before the shutdown. So the transition for us was actually rather smooth, thankfully. And so we were doing in-person events. We were doing what we call wine and wills, which is kind of like an estate planning 101.
I love it.
Yeah. So we went completely, virtual. So I had already been doing webinars and things like that, but we do a live webcast weekly. We still do a live webcast. So anyone that wants to join that and be able to ask questions, and get answers in real time, that's an opportunity as well. So we were able to really kind of make that shift and pivot. And we just updated, all of our calendars from the in-person meetings. We made everything virtual, easy instructions, for clients to be able to follow so that it wasn't a cumbersome or complicated process, for them. And we were able to do everything from start to finish virtually. So we're still able to do that, of course, but thankfully, we have the option to do things in person as well. And so clients really get to have the option of doing, either way, whatever works for them. But yeah, we did see, unfortunately, a lot of law firms or businesses just fold because they weren't able to make the shifts. And fortunately for us, we were able to continue. We didn't have any downtime, how a lot of people slowed down or kind of like things paused. We had none of that with my firm. We stayed busy. We became even busier because people became more in touch with, their mortality and the need for planning, especially as we were seeing people hospitalized and their family members weren't able to be in the same room, let alone make decisions, for them. And so just a lot of unfortunate and tragic situations that really kind of lit the fire under a lot of people to be able to take steps to plan.
Yeah. When as we're planning, it feels like we're a much more transient society now. So people are no longer in the same neighborhood or community as their parents are, and generations aren't necessarily in the same proximity. Individuals don't stay at the same job for 20, 25 years. They're moving from company to company, city to city. Families are different. Like right now, some of the younger generation aren't having as many kids as older generations had. So with the evolution and the more transient society that we have, has that factored into any changes in estate planning or things that we need to be aware of and questions we need to ask ourselves?
Definitely, because there are many more changes that are happening, on a day-to-day basis, really, when it comes to our lives. Before, or traditionally, it was kind of like, okay, well, we kind of have this life, it's set up. There's not really a lot, of change happening. That's not the case anymore. There's constant change happening. And, and we do have the changes that are happening in the law too, as we come up on, this election and what that's going to mean as far as tax laws, and particularly on the estate planning side, the estate tax exemption. So there's a lot of planning that needs to be done in the near future to make sure that we are protecting our assets and minimizing the taxes or expense or fees that can be associated with things that happen in the future, and just really making sure that we're staying ahead of the curve and working with a firm that is on top of those changes in the law. They're really important.
Definitely important. And when you talk about the future of estate planning, when it comes to aging populations, like the baby boomers, right, one of the biggest populations, many are, of which who are about to retire,
Mhm.
what, from an estate planning perspective, considerations should we take around the rise of long-term care needs?
Yeah. So long-term care is often something that gets overlooked, because, elder law and estate planning are really two separate areas of law, but they're very much intertwined. They're very much connected. So when I meet with clients for the life and legacy planning session, one of the things that we talk about is long-term care. And I ask, do you have any long-term care insurance? Well, what is your plan for long-term care if you become disabled, if you can't take care of yourself? Because there's so many misconceptions. People think, okay, well, Medicare will cover me, and Medicare does not cover long-term care. Um, there are some programs through the state, through the government, that you might have access to for long-term care services. And when I talk about long-term care services, I'm talking about things like if you need an in-home caregiver, if you have to go to a nursing home, facility or assisted living facility. Those things are not covered through Medicare. So that's a common misconception. So you either have to plan ahead for that, or if you are able to qualify, for Medicaid, that is one way to be able to get those long-term care services. But most people can't qualify because of the assets that we have or the income that we're generating, whether it's through a pension or Social Security. A lot of these baby boomers is kind of the last generation of people that we're going to see that have actual pensions. Our generation, there's like zero pensions. We have 401ks, which do not compare to, if we do have a 401k, definitely don't compare to the pensions of the generations prior. But yeah, so when it comes to long-term care, it's really important to have the conversations, because if you're not gonna, if you don't have coverage, if you don't have a long-term care policy, and even having long-term care policies, you may only get a fraction of what you need covered through that policy. So you're going to have to find a way to subsidize or cover those additional expenses. And it's really expensive. In Nevada, the average cost of long-term care is about $10,000 per month.
Per
So,
month?
$100,000+ per year that people are having to pay out of pocket if you don't qualify for the services through the state, or if you haven't done any legal planning. So there are certain legal tools that are actually available to us if we don't qualify just outright, through for the state benefits. There are some things that we can do to actually shelter your assets so that they don't get counted against you, and you can actually qualify for the benefits and for that care. So having the conversations is really important. That's a starting point. And so many times I see, during that session when we're talking about estate planning and we're talking about long-term care or elder law, and clients are like, oh my gosh, I just didn't even think about that. And that's why it's important that you work with a firm, you work with a lawyer that's going to be there ongoing. We've been talking about that ongoing relationship, because things change. We get older. We need more support. We have to plan for contingencies that we, didn't even know existed. And so being able to navigate those, in real time, and not, kind of like it as an after the fact type of situation where we're scrambling and now we have limited resources or options. We want to have all those options laid out and have a plan forward.
Well, I think one of the frustrating realities of the situation is that we no longer know what retirement age is, right? It's no longer 65. It feels like it's the goalposts continue to move. And so with that in mind, many people are starting to plan for early retirement, whether that's in their mid 50s, late 50s, before they get to that point. How should they consider estate planning and financial planning? Should they come alongside of each other?
Oh my gosh, yes. So financial planning, there's almost a trifecta, right? It's financial planning, tax planning, and estate planning. So you want to make sure that you have, each side of that triangle or the trifecta covered. And of course, we can handle all of the items on the estate planning side. You want to work with other collateral professionals, financial advisors, tax advisors, in a very similar way. So you want to take a similar approach to finding someone that you trust, someone that is relationship based, that is going to be proactive, that is going to have conversations with you, that is going to encourage you to plan ahead and take action now so that you can live the type of lifestyle that you want, when it comes time to retirement. So that if you do need to retire earlier because of, whatever situation, disability or otherwise, that you have coverage for that, that you have the financial means to be able to pay your bills and make sure that you have the medical care and coverage that you need without burdening your children or burdening other loved ones. I think that that's definitely a shift as we've seen things evolve, where prior generations would just kind of leave it to the younger generation to figure it out. Like, oh, well, that's what my kids are for. My kids are going to make sure that my retirement is taken care of, and my elder years are covered. And that's not fair. When we have the ability and we have the resources to be able to make sure that we are taking care of our own affairs ahead of time, that's our responsibility. So that's another shift that we've definitely seen is, more people in our generation are more proactive, and they're not wanting to leave a mess for their children. They're not wanting to just rely on their children. We're wanting to make sure that we're doing what we can now to plan for that. And that includes having a proper estate plan, having a good relationship with your attorney, an ongoing relationship where you can call and ask questions and get guidance and counseling from today and moving forward. Similarly, having a good financial advisor, having a good tax advisor, so that your attorney, your financial planner or advisor, your tax advisor, we all work together for your benefit, for your protection. And, that's another thing that can be a little scary or daunting is, okay, well, it's one thing about, putting an estate plan in place, but now, I don't trust someone to manage my money. I don't know about, having a financial advisor or a tax advisor. And so that's another thing that we do assist clients with is cultivating those relationships and providing resources to different advisors that would be helpful to support you.
Nice. Well, following up on that, it feels like there's some new trends in charitable giving, particularly with maybe some of the younger generations who are socially responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of looking at socially responsible investing, are there any trends that you're seeing that are influencing estate planning strategies?
Yeah, we have seen definitely more of an emphasis on philanthropy, with the younger generation where, they have certain social causes or missions that they are really more invested in than what we've seen previous. And so it's really good because the timing is perfect as we are seeing these different shifts on the estate tax or even tax planning side, where you can actually do so much more as far as giving, charitable giving, and there's benefit, to it, where you're actually able to take assets out of your countable estate, and instead of just it getting taxed, you're able to actually make charitable contributions. And so it's kind of like you've got 3 buckets of where your assets can go. They can go to your family, they can go to charity, or they can go to the government or, taxes. And so like pick 2, because that, it's going to be at least two of those things. So now it's like, okay, well, what are the different options that we have? And now, because there is such much more awareness around philanthropy and philanthropic, missions and social good, that now we're able to actually utilize what's been available for quite some time as far as charitable giving and, tax strategies around it, to be able to really, maximize and leverage those tools available while achieving so much, good in the world.
That's great. Well, and how can individuals prepare for future legal changes? We talked about the impact of administration changes, both
Mhm.
at the national and the local level. Are there any other things that might affect their estate plan, and what should we all be looking out for?
I would say it's important to plan now. And so once you have a plan in place, you're able to, especially as we know things are going to be changing, we can put certain protections and provisions in place no matter what changes in the law occur, no matter who comes into office, so that we don't get hit with a 40, 50, 55% tax, so that we're sheltering the assets, we're keeping the assets within our family, and we're not having, to pay additional taxes or fees upon the transfer of our wealth. So the key is really to plan early and then to make the adjustments and work with a firm, work with a lawyer who has the expertise to be able to guide you as things do shift. Because, as much as we would love to have a crystal ball, we don't know for sure what will happen. And so the important thing is, don't procrastinate. Don't come into this, analysis paralysis. Like, get the ball rolling and put something in place that can be changed, that can be modified as things do continue to evolve.
Yeah. And I think it's, again, that the same theme and the same thread, planning early, starting now and starting to get it done, and working with somebody who has your best interests in mind, who is relational, not just transactional. This, again, continues to come into full color and full bloom as I continue the conversation with you and Verlena about why it's so important to be in these conversations. One of the things that happens is you don't have to do the heavy lift. Right? Like what Shane and her team are doing on a regular basis is paying attention to the new laws and the policies and the tax codes and how they're impacting your estate. And so you can trust that you'll get that guidance. And so when we think about the evolution of estate planning, it really is, the evolution is in you. It's in you making the decision to actually get an estate plan in order today. And so, Shane, thank you once again for talking to us about where estate planning is today and where it's evolving and how it's evolving, and the work that you all do to help your clients navigate those shifts.
It's my honor. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, this is Angela Taylor, your host for Unlocking the Club. Thanks for joining us for this episode on the evolution of estate planning in our 12-part series. Again, I encourage you to check out the show notes on your podcast platform of choice, or as you're watching on YouTube, and you'll find a special offer for a free consultation with the Young Law Group, so you can get started today on protecting your family's legacy and putting things in place for your future. Until next time on Unlocking the Club, please be well.
Thanks for listening to Unlocking the Club. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or your favorite streaming platform so that you can experience every episode. And follow us on social media, where you'll hear about future guests, access special features, and connect with this amazing community. Head on over there and let us know how you are unlocking the club. Until next time, peace.